Welcome back to A Better Conversation, a podcast put on by Better Texas. As always, I'm your host, Chris Clement, joined more importantly by the man, the myth, the mustache, and the beard, Mr. Tommy Mason.
It's coming in nicely. I hope it doesn't get too itchy for summertime. You know?
I left out the legend. You're also the legend.
Well, not quite. I have to do something really stupid to get in the history books. But we are talking about some pretty stupid moves that have been going on. Maybe some really smart moves. That's the problem living in this time is like big things are happening. Like you look at it, you're like, that looks stupid, but actually this could be a generational changing thing. So I am looking forward to this episode.
Well, I think what we saw was probably really smart things, but things that maybe voters didn't know about. So we recently had our primaries, and almost a month ago now. And still sifting through the data, sifting through the results, people trying to figure out why things happened and what is thusly, or whatever Abraham Lincoln said to that effect. But one of the things that we sort of uncovered, if you will, by looking through some of the financials were kind of interesting with regard to Slate cards. So those of you who don't know, like the technical term for it, anytime you have those voter guides that you're handed that has a list of the ballot, and here's all the people on your ballot, you should vote for these people. Ideally, you have a precinct chair that makes one of those for you. I know when we do our training with the Better Texas, we teach our precinct chairs that yes, you should for elections, usually more not the primary, but at the general election, make voter cards for your people. If they ask you questions during the primary, you can help steer them in certain directions on the primary as far as what the different candidates stand for. But you also have organizations that make these things. And sometimes it's quite obvious, right? You'll have some known PAC like the Texans for Lawsuit Reform. They may put out a Slate card, or ART, I can't remember, Association of Republicans of Texas, something to that effect.
They all sound like that.
Right.
Very patriotic, yeah.
Right. But these are sort of known organizations that put out their Slate cards. Going into the general election, you might see Republican women's clubs put out Slate cards.
Yeah.
That you're used to seeing. So an interesting thing happened this year in Texas during the primary. There were a bunch of new organizations providing Slate cards, one of them on a statewide basis. So if you paid attention to the mail, you might have received something called the link letter. I know I received it at my house. Kyle, I think you said you got one too.
I received it, read it over coffee.
There you go. And what the link letter was it was a sort of a glossy-ish, like grassroots looking little, I guess, brochure that had, one of the things it had was a Slate card. Here are the candidates that we're endorsing that you should vote for. And then there were glossy ads for candidates within it and some, article-looking things. But, sort of a newsletter, if you will. Well, I think this thing had been in Harris County for maybe a few cycles, or it had been a common thing in Harris County. I don't know how long. I'm told that this is the first year that the link letter went statewide. I know this is the first year that I got one.
Same. Yeah.
Well, I got it. It was tailored to my county. It had endorsements for Collin County and the races that were in Collin County, and you should vote this person, this person. It said you can take this into the polling location, all of that sort of stuff. I thought when I looked at it that it was some, grassroots organization that was, because I think on the first page is like linking conservatives or something like that. Well, the link letters endorsed candidates did very well. So when we were looking at the statewide candidates that the link letter endorsed, it was remarkable about how well its endorsed candidates did statewide. Let me try to pull up the page for it here.
Yeah. It seemed like they almost either won or they're in the runoff.
Right. From a statewide standpoint, I think that was absolute. And if you heard my laptop, I apologize.
Yeah.
Right. So looking here, so on the website for the link letter, they've got a copy of their Harris County link letter. And you can kind of see it was the same way across the state, just with different races depending upon where you are. But just kind of going down this. John Cornyn was endorsed. He's in the runoff. Governor Abbott was endorsed. He won, obviously. Dan Patrick was endorsed. He won, obviously. Mayes Middleton was endorsed. He got the most votes. He made the runoff. Don Huffines was endorsed. He sort of surprisingly won outright. Nate Sheets was endorsed over incumbent Sid Miller. He won. That was somewhat of a surprise. Bo French was endorsed for the Railroad Commission, and he is, I think, was the leader, maybe second place. He made the runoff against incumbent Jim Wright. That was a huge surprise, and the reason is if you remember when we did sort of our lead up to the primary elections, the polling data from January showed Bo French in like third or fourth place, which makes sense because previously he had only been the Tarrant County GOP chair. I don't think he'd been involved in any sort of statewide campaigns or anything. So it was a surprise to see Bo French doing so well in this election. For the Court of Criminal Appeals, place 3, Allison Fox was endorsed. She made the runoff, I believe. And then place 9, both candidates were endorsed, both John Messinger and Jennifer Bolito, John Messinger having won there. And so you might be wondering, why are we focusing on this? Well, this link letter, like I said, first year it went statewide. All the candidates in its statewide elections either won or made the runoff.
Right.
That's incredible. Right? That is such a good, win rate, if you will,
Right.
making endorsements.
It's not a paid advertisement, by the way.
We're not. Yes, we have not been paid by Linkletter. I don't know who Linkletter actually pays. I know who pays Linkletter though. But I mean, like some of these races, like the fact that they've endorsed Mayes Middleton and he was the one that made the runoff, that's a big deal. Don Huffines winning it outright, that's a big deal. Nate Sheets beating an incumbent, that's a big deal. Bo French literally taking the incumbent who has already won this statewide race as railroad commissioner, has no scandals. It seems to have done a very good job as railroad commissioner. Now all of a sudden he's in a runoff in a primary.
Yeah.
So sort of a little odd. So we did a little bit of digging. We're political archaeologists here on A Better Conversation. And so we pulled up some financial records. Quite interesting. So one of the things that you can do, you can look up political expenditures. You can go to the Texas Ethics Commission website. If you're not doing this and you want to really well inform yourself about candidates, pull their financial records. You can go to the Texas Ethics Commission for any state races. Your local county offices should have financial disclosures for candidates at the county level. You can go to the FEC, Federal Elections Commission, I think it is, or committee. They'll give that to you on federal races, like Senate, Congress, President, things like that. This is how you can go look and see who is donating money to campaigns and how are these campaigns spending their money.
Yep.
Well, what we found is the campaigns that are spending money on the link letter. When I said it was remarkable, remember some of these races we talked about and who was endorsed by the link letter. So first, you might recall that Don Huffines was endorsed by the link letter. Well, on December 3rd, 2025, the Don Huffines campaign made a $300,000 ad spend with the link letter. I told you that Bo French was endorsed by the link letter. Well, his campaign made $150,000 ad buy over several purchases with the link letter, and then a separate statewide PAC made another $150,000 contribution or expenditure with the link letter on Bo French's behalf. So either Bo French or this PAC, $300,000 to the link letter. When we looked at Nate Sheets again endorsed by the link letter.
Yeah.
$300,000 for that statewide race, or that $300,000 from Nate Sheets to the link letter. We saw a number of other candidates that were endorsed. We talked about those two. The link letter endorsed 2 candidates for the Court of Appeals. One, John Messinger. John Messinger donated, it appears, $21,000 to the link letter. But you also recall that his opponent, Jennifer Bolito, was also endorsed by the link letter. Well, Jennifer Bolito also contributed $30,000 to the link letter. So 2 candidates in that race, both endorsed, both gave over $20,000 to link letter. And you can go pull these numbers. This isn't something that's, a state secret. Like, you can go find this. We talked about Allison Fox being endorsed. She made a $30,000 purchase with the link letter. We talked about Mayes Middleton, another statewide race, who received the endorsement of the link letter. He also made a $300,000 campaign contribution to the link letter. So when we looked at the financials, when we searched for the link letter, we searched up for what's called the What's Up program, which is the radio show tied to the link letter. We didn't see any other contributions made, for example, in the AG's race. Mayes was the only contribution, the only expenditure, the only payment to link letter was from Mayes Middleton. He got the endorsement. The only candidate in the comptroller's race that we could find when we searched the terms that made a contribution to the link letter was Don Huffines. Again, he gave $300,000. So take that with what you will. I think it seems quite a stretch of a coincidence, but I mean, each one of these candidates that was endorsed by the link letter had purchased ad space in the link letter for $300,000 for some of these statewide races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this race, I mean, this is nothing new. Make a donation, they spend the money. They sent this out to, it seems like pretty much everyone that they thought was going to be a primary voter in Texas, which is obviously a big spend. I don't know how much money of this they held on to. I'm curious to hear, and again, how many people did they turn away? Like, did a few people show up with money and like, hey, I want to donate, or I want the endorsement, and they're like, they just saw the writing on the wall, like, no, you don't have you don't have a shot, and we don't want to have you in our magazine and then lose, or hey, we already got our person that we want to win. That's that would be interesting to know. That's like, so things like that you'll never find out really unless you're like in the circle,
right?
But this is what it takes. I mean, to win politics today. I mean, we grew up learning about, what was his name, goes to Washington.
Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
Mr. Smith goes to Washington, how a bill is made and everything like that. It's like, I don't know how long that actually existed ever. I mean, if you go all the way back to Roman politics, it's like, right, who occupied the seats? Is the people with the money. So like, I guess this is kind of yes, it's like, okay, did these people win because they donated to this, or did they, it's kind of like a Trump endorsement, like, is he endorsing because the polls are already showing this person at a 70% favor to win, or is it like this person's a 70% favor to win because now they have a Trump endorsement? It's, the chicken or the egg. But point being is, if you are looking to run in politics, unless you are a local specialty and everyone knows your name, like, you have got to be willing to do these things. That's what I take away from it. Someone that is not necessarily in fundraising and it's just like, wow, you have to pay that much to get into what essentially, when I picked it up, it looks like a small town newspaper. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm going to flip to, page 5 or 6. I'm going to start reading the obituaries, and we're going to start seeing that there's going to be a small rodeo in 2 weeks or something like that with, the local live country band or something like that. So, it's not that, breathtaking as far as, quality production or anything like that, but right, you read it because it looks like that, and it's like, you read it because you think, oh, okay, cool, yeah, it's like the local endorsement of whoever. So, it's like the candidates make their pitch. It's like a full page pitch for a lot of these people. They make their pitch on why they're the best candidate, and they can kind of run with how the structure they want on there and everything like that. But I'm interested to see how large that mailing list was, and also who read it. I know I read it. I know I read the entire thing. Even a few people that, farther down the list, I was like, I don't even know what this office really even does, but it is definitely interesting. And some candidates had multi-pages that they that they bought, I guess you could say, or
Right.
however you want to word that. But
Well, I mean, so if you get the link letter, or if you go up onto their website and you look at the magazine or whatever that they have in here, you definitely can see where, like, for example, we talked about, Mayes Middleton. So there is one page of the link letter that talks about what is the AG, how does it affect your life,
right.
and there is a guest editorial from Mayes Middleton that is also a full page that you have here. Then, if you flip to the next page, there is a 2-page ad for Mayes Middleton.
Yeah.
So, I mean, ostensibly, that is what the $300,000 purchased.
Right.
Is the ads here for Mayes Middleton.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had, for example, John Messinger and Judge Jennifer Bolito, both of them also got to write 1-page, editorials about themselves and their candidacy with a banner ad below them. So, ostensibly, those banner ads are what they paid $20,000, $30,000 for.
Yeah.
Don Huffines, again, there's a page where it talks about what the comptroller does, and then a message from Don Huffines on the other page, then a 2-page ad for Don Huffines.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of tracking with Mayes Middleton, that's what, $300,000 gets you. Nate Sheets has a 2-page ad. There's nothing in here that he has his 2-page ad, and then there is a 1-page write-up from Joanne Fleming about Nate Sheets. Bo French has his Matt Rinaldi, former RPT chair, seemed to write a 1-pager about why you should vote for Bo French, and then Bo French had a 2-page ad beyond that. So
Looks like he's in that Oil Man series.
Landman,
that's what it is. Yeah.
So the 4 candidates that had the 2-page, well, there's 5 candidates with the 2-page ad. One was John Cornyn. We didn't get a chance to find it. I'm not saying that John Cornyn didn't pay any money for his ad and link letter. I'm sure he did, or some packed it on his behalf. But as far as the Texas statewide, there were 4 candidates that had 2-page ads in here, and they were the ones that paid $300,000.
Right.
So the question is, and I think this goes back to Kyle's point, is, well, did the link letter only accept, with the
highest
did the
offer.
link letter decide who it was going to endorse, and then say, well, we're not gonna, if we're not endorsing you, we're not gonna take your money to put an ad in. Maybe everybody running for a railroad commissioner wanted to buy the $300,000 ad for link letter, and link letter said, no, we're endorsing Bo. He's the only one that can buy an ad. I don't know how that process works. We have no inside knowledge on that. We're also not saying that these candidates purchased their ad with the link letter. The point that we're making is the only candidates that were endorsed by link letter, or each candidate that made a mail buy or whatever with link letter, received an endorsement.
Yeah.
So, I wish that was more clearly disclosed in the link letter. It is clearly disclosed on the pages where you do have the ad purchase, that this is a political ad paid for by the campaign. But, on the 1-pager that was about, Bo French, I didn't see anything on there where it was, hey, Bo French made a contribution to the link letter or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know how the process works, but, I mean, my goodness.
I think they're purchasing that advertising space, is my take. That's how I figure they would do that.
Yeah, and it's disclosed on the ad page, but there's no disclosure on the other page within the link letter. And so, I mean, how do they decide if the ad buy is for those full page or the banner ads? I get that. All the disclosures that are supposed to be on there are that. But, why are these the only like write-ups that are available? because, I mean, the only candidate that appeared in the link letter that I can recall that we didn't see a contribution to the link letter was Ken Paxton. And it was not positive about Ken Paxton. Literally on one of the first pages of the link letter, the editor of the link letter, Terry Lowry, explains why he did not endorse Ken Paxton.
Right.
And he talks about Ken Paxton's infidelity and the divorce. As one thing that says, no remorse, no regret. During a recent interview with Ken Paxton, in his sharing of personal information, I did not detect any remorse, any regret, no sorrow, no repentance. And then below that it says, I am deeply troubled. And it says, I'm not a priest or a pastor, nor am I a licensed professional counselor. Our conversation left me deeply troubled. Ken Paxton and his entire family deserve and need our prayers for physical, emotional, and spiritual healing. So that's the only candidate that really they talked about where there wasn't a contribution that I saw.
Yeah, that's definitely not an endorsement, to put it lightly. Wow, yeah.
And then on the next page, there's a pastor from Prestonwood Baptist Church in Plano, Dr. Jack Graham, talking about Senator Cornyn and essentially why he supports Senator Cornyn.
Right, and Prestonwood is a very large church as well.
So just sort of just something to keep in mind when you get these mailers, when you get these newsletters, these push cards, the slates, like maybe look them up. Maybe look up the financial reports of the candidates and things along those lines, because I mean, I would like to know that information as far as when I'm getting that. Because I mean, I when I got the link letter, I was like, yeah, there's a lot about this that I agree with, and it seems like they did the research, and I see all these write-ups and all that sort of stuff where there's an actual explanation for why the candidates should and shouldn't be in office. And I mean, there's friends of ours that wrote part of the articles and stuff that are in there.
Right.
But I would have,
You would have liked the disclosure, but you knew.
I mean, I knew about the pages that were purchased in the link letter.
Those were paying to get in there.
Clear disclosures. Yeah. Well, I don't know if people paid to get the endorsements.
Well, no, I'm saying to get into the magazine.
Right.
Like for the ads. You knew that. You knew picking that up. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so that's
a lot of people don't. Sorry, but I asked that question because I was trying to lead into a lot of people when they read this stuff or when they pick that up, they kind of just read it and take it at face value. It's like when me and you pick it up, we immediately know. We don't know how much it was, but we know just being around, it's like someone paid a good amount of money. It's not, first off, it's not cheap to ship a print and send a very to everybody in Texas that they think is going to be a primary voter.
Right.
But at the same time, they raise a lot of money.
Correct.
To do that, to get the endorsement or their ad anyway in everyone's mailbox in a very actually well put together magazine. I mean, we've talked about the mailers on and off, and I mean, I save them, I look at them, and it's just like, wow, there's a lot of money being spent on this thing. And so this is actually probably cheaper than John Cornyn or Ken Paxton, I'm guessing, to send a mailer to every single person in Texas that they think is going to be a primary voter, if comparatively, an individual mailer compared to just buying a space in this magazine. I don't know, I'm interested in seeing that too, because maybe it was like, hey, this is actually really cheap because we're all pitching in on this one mailer. This one magazine,
That would make sense, yes.
I don't know that though. I don't know what the print cost is and all that, so.
Right, yeah. If you're, so just like I said, just from those four candidates, from $300,000 from Don Huffines, $300,000 from Beau French, $300,000 from Nate Sheets, $300,000 from Mayes Middleton. I'm just a lawyer. I'm not a mathematician, but that's $1.2 million. Hold
on, let me get my calculator.
Right. So that is, that's a lot of money to send. If you're thinking about, most small mailers are like $1 a piece. I don't know how much it costs for this to be bulk printed and shipped and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, there's money there to send that stuff out. So that kind of got us also thinking, because one of the things we talked about before on the podcast, where there were all these new packs that were popping up around the state in various counties. And these new packs were popping up and just sending out mailers or sending out push cards. You'd show up at the polling location and they'd be printed off and people were handing them to you. You'd see them posted on social media. And it's very interesting when you look at them because, and again, we talk about like a new way to do things politically.
Right.
Man, Beau French was very active in donating money to these PACs around the state, as was, to a lesser extent, Don Huffines, Nate Sheets, things like that. So, like, for example, Tarrant County Patriots, right? There's a number of people that donated to these campaigns or to these PACs. A major one was this group called Texans United for a Conservative Majority.
Sounds like something I'd definitely get behind. Sorry, we're having spreadsheet trouble. It's starting to twitch out on us.
Actually, the ones that we were trying to pull up earlier.
Oh, nice. Finally, they loaded.
Yeah, it was given money. There's a PAC called Texas Freedom Fund for the Advancement of Justice PAC, which very well funded. Okay. Gave a lot of money to the Beau French campaign and to some of these various PACs around the state, including the Tarrant County Patriots. I mean, they gave hundreds of thousands, over 100, almost over $200,000 to this PAC.
Yeah.
And the primary thing that this PAC did was to print push cards. I mean, lots of money spent on printing mailers or printing get out the vote mailers, Slate cards, things along those lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Boss County Conservative, again, Beau French, $4,000 there. East Texas Conservative Voter Guide PAC, Beau French, Don Huffines, Nate Sheets. Beau French gave $100,000 to that particular group, with Don Huffines giving $50,000 and Nate Sheets giving $65,000. And this is all stuff on you can pull up on the Texas Elections Commission website, or Texas Ethics Commission website. Again, most of this, money spent printing slates. Same thing, you got Fort Bend Conservatives PAC, also printing out slate cards, Gillespie County Patriots, Johnson County Patriots, Llano County Conservatives, Palo Pinto County Conservatives, Panhandle Conservative Voter Guide / Panhandle Conservatives. That group, Beau French gave $25,000, and that group made candidate slates.
Yep.
So, new strategy, it appears, for campaigns like Beau French to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars around the state funding PACs, and those PACs are donating to PACs, and those PACs turning around making slates.
So here's my take on it. I'm actually happy to see this. Wild take. Democrats have been doing this kind of thing for a very long time, and Republicans have been saying, we need to get more organized, we need to get more things out to our voters, we need to do this, we need to do that. This is kind of what that looks like, of like, when you start trying to find out, okay, where do like all these people get their money? Like, where all these different PACs? Like, how is it that it seems like every election cycle, Democrats have so many door knockers, and there's always information for their voters on their door, and all these things that we've been talking about. It's like, it's because the infrastructure wasn't there. This is kind of new-ish to us. All these different things. Maybe it's like, I don't know if there was a, let's say if you wanted into this magazine, or if you wanted into these mailers or something, was there a, I don't think I received any kind of, other ticket slate, if you will, like I didn't receive like, a a different magazine with different options. It seems like there's kind of only one right now, but there could be, there could be multiple in the near future. So, I don't really have a problem with any of this. I think it's interesting how the PACs were made, like 6 months before the primary, and then they show up with a bunch of money, they send money, they actually got money returned, it looks like, as far as I can read from these financial statements. It looks like literally like $1 million was donated and then returned and then spent somehow as a loan within some of these, and then it goes from that PAC to a smaller PAC, or is divvied out through through one PAC into 6 or 7 other PACs as they spend it in West Texas or East Texas, or however it is divided. And it kind of breaks it down once you really start going into it. I mean, somebody that's an accountant could probably follow this fairly easily. We're trying to track this as like, okay, well, what is really going on here? So it's good that Republicans are at least getting savvy on how to, legally navigate the system and do these things. I mean, as long as voters, and I think Republican primary voters are fairly educated on what they're picking up. They know there's always some kind of, lean on it, but I think it's good that there are people that are networking and doing things of this nature. I mean, this, other than it's like, hey, my candidate wasn't on there and they didn't win, I totally get that. And it's like sometimes the person that you don't want wins, or they do want that wins, but the amount of money being moved around is extraordinary in a primary on races you wouldn't necessarily expect as well. Like some of these races that are being spent on, it's like, how does that even make sense? I mean, obviously there's a emotional or philosophical need that people are like, hey, I really do believe that we need judges here, or we need whatever was on the slate. I mean, you can kind of see that with like a governor's position or an AG position or something like that. But when you look at some of these numbers on like some of the down ballot, it's very surprising, and then you have to wonder, okay, well, what is the return on that? I mean, I just feel like everyone's always looking for some type of return, some kind of ROI, whether it's not necessarily actually money, but there is some kind of weight put on that. That's what's been interesting to me.
I'm not as bearish on it as you are. Is it bearish or bullish? I think I'm not as bullish on it as you are. I guess my maybe this is, look, a better Dallas, now a better Texas. We've never played in the primary space.
Right.
I mean, we don't make endorsements. We don't get involved with one side or the other during the primary elections.
Sure.
We save our focus for the general election.
Right.
If there are candidates running in the primaries that want to come to our events or do that sort of stuff, we'll certainly allow them to do so, but we're not going to go make endorsements. The issue that I have is I don't know. Maybe it just seems strange, to your point, that you have a lot of these PACs that are just sort of popping up, or like Tarrant County Patriots. That's been around for a few cycles, right? It's largely in the past has been funded by Texans for a United majority, conservative majority, whatever, like the Wilkes Dunn, I think, funded PAC sort of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. But I guess that's part of the thing for me is like, maybe it's just the bias of us having the PAC that we do and the way that we operate. It's odd for me to have some of this like generically conservative Republican type of PAC that's funded by one candidate or the other, or one set of, and is basically just making a slate for like these certain candidates
for themselves.
Right. When I think, and again, this is me just talking as a voter. If I'm there in some Republican club or some Republican PAC that's like Collin County Conservatives or something like that, I don't know, like the faith that I give in that is like, oh, this is like a bunch of voters like me. You know, these are just a bunch of volunteers, grassroots people that are involved in politics, and they sat around the table and they decided who they were going to endorse, which candidates they were going to get behind and they were going to put on their slate.
Right, not political operatives.
Not necessarily like a political operative thing where it's, you know, a candidate's essentially paying for the slate card. I get it. I mean, there's nothing like wrong with it. It just, to me, it kind of hits a false note in the sense that, like, the reason I would put credence, you know, it's just like if a candidate wanted to buy a mailer and send me a mailer, hey, this is a political ad paid for by blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Okay, I get it. I can look at it. It might persuade me. Maybe I like the things the candidate says, the positions that the candidate takes. But if all of a sudden there's a PAC that's like, oh, well, this PAC is largely funded by this candidate, and all of a sudden that PAC is backing that candidate, but I don't know if, unless I've gone through here and pulled all this stuff, like, I don't know that.
You don't know that, yeah.
Like, that is where, as like a voter for me, it's like, I'd want to know that. Like, hey, by the way, we're making this slate, even if it's like we picked our slate and then we asked the candidates if they would help fund the slate cards or whatever. Like, okay, you could do that as a PAC.
Sure.
But, you know, I don't know.
More transparency, more disclosure.
The fear that I have, and I don't know if this happened. This may just be a big coincidence. Who knows? But it's like you talk about it being like a political operation. Like, that's the thing that I'm just like, I don't want that. You know, like, I want the grassroots groups to legitimately be the voice of the people. Like, that's why you have the phrase astroturfing, you know, where like the Democrats do that. You talk about like political operatives, where they have these rallies and you find out that so many people in the rallies are paid to be there. Or there are these professional...
We do make fun of that a lot.
There's these professional recruiting organizations that go out there and go recruit people off of campuses to come do these marches where these people would have never organically shown up. And that's the thing about the First Amendment. Like, the people protesting and marching in the street with grievances is supposed to be powerful because it's a bunch of people that organically care enough about this issue to get up, organize themselves, and go march. Same thing with these PACs. It's supposed to matter because it's like when we founded our PAC. A bunch of people that cared, that were active, that were involved in elections, that came together and like tried to put the resources that we could together to make a positive impact in elections and that sort of thing.
Right.
And so that's what you that's and I guess it's naivete, but like that's what you assume.
Yeah. Well, no, it's true. We go back and forth about this all the time. Like, it's not. I mean, I hate to use that word, but it's like, it's the spirit of the law, or it's the spirit of the thought behind it, but it's like there's just so many people that just like don't follow that moral or spiritual, like, and we see it in all types of, not just like PACs and politics. I mean, we just see it everywhere. It's like, it's just constant, like, okay, yes, like technically this is legal, but like that's not what, like, we can't just,
it's
society,
not cool.
It's not cool, man. That's not what we're trying to do here. It's like, you know, just like, we don't want to play with you right now. No, it's like, it, you know, a society can't have a law for every single thing and box in and out every single thing. It's like, at some point we have to be like, we do need to score. And we just need people to be like, yeah, I know that's legal, but like, come on, man, that's not cool.
Right.
You know, but that's a very hard line when you have opponents that aren't doing that, and it's like, do you play by the rules and feel that you're just going to lose, or do you kind of like, no, I'm never going to give up my moral high ground, or however you want to put that, on a lot of different issues, not talking about specifically this, but I'm not going to give up my moral high ground and I'll lose.
Right.
And I find myself, I don't know about you, but I find myself constantly coming head to head with this, because in so many different issues that we face as a country and a state and a society, We have people that don't follow the rules, purposely navigate the technicalities to circumvent us, to defeat us, displace us, stop us, all these different things. And it's like, this is a moral conundrum of like, okay, but what, like, this person is making me put myself in a position where now I'm like, and I'm a bad actor.
Right.
What do I do? You know, and it's like, I don't know. What did Socrates say about this? I have no idea. So I'm just kind of like going with it of like, what actually do we do? And I think a lot of people kind of face this, and I find that has already bled through the Democratic Party. And I'm not talking about your neighbors that vote Democrats. I'm talking about the leadership. I'm talking about the far left. I'm talking about the political activists and the people that you hear talking leftist points. They've already said, those rules don't count, and what we will do, we will hold, rules for radicals, we'll hold them to their own standards and we won't follow it. Right. It's like, okay, how far are we willing to go with that? Like, we realize that's happening now, what do we do?
And so the reason we're bringing this up is we have runoffs coming up.
Right.
And so be fully informed. There's nothing that we've talked about tonight where anybody is breaking the law or violating ethics rules or anything like that. Just clearly we want to make certain, we're not making any of those sort of accusations. All we're saying is that as a voter, part of informing yourself is informing yourself on who paid for this thing to go out. How do they afford to send this thing out? So, like, for example, you hear it all the time where you say, well, this candidate accepted this much money from blah, blah, blah PAC. Or so, like, we talked about, Texans United for a conservative majority and the money that they spent. Well, I mean, you can go on the financials and see, okay, well, in June of 2025, Tim Dunn made a $5 million contribution towards that PAC.
Dang.
And it's received some other money in here, but like, okay, that's Tim Dunn's PAC. So when you see Texans United for a conservative majority, just know, well, that's Tim Dunn's PAC. It's not that you had millions of Texans across, you didn't have hundreds of thousands of Texans across the state giving $25, $50 donations to get to their millions of dollars. No, like a super rich guy paid $5 million into that. You'll see that all over the place.
Yeah.
You're probably going to get a link letter or something like it. You'll probably get a push card or something along those lines. Take a few minutes to pull up the Texas Ethics Commission's website. Search the campaign finance reports. Search who made an expenditure to the link letter or the What's Up radio program or whatever. Take a look at it. Who made contributions? And if you see the same people that made contributions receiving endorsements within that particular publication, consider that information. How you want to look at it is up to you, but I think as an informed voter, it's nice to know where the money is coming from that is being used to inform you or what have you. Again, there's nothing wrong with a campaign paying for an advertisement. They do that all the time. They should be doing that all the time. There is nothing wrong with a PAC accepting contributions from campaigns. They do that all the time. That's a totally fine and acceptable thing to do. But as an informed candidate, it's just like with anything else. Look, I happen to think that my law firm is the best law firm in town. I also make my living off of my law firm.
Right.
So take that with what you will, right? I mean, I obviously have a bias when I'm coming into it. I think Kyle has the finest mustache that I know. I obviously have a bias. So, I don't know. It's just money in politics. This is why websites like Open Secrets are so good. We've gotten I think that as voters, we've gotten much better of finding out who's funding our candidates. Yeah. I guess now we just also need to find out who's funding the political advertisements that we're receiving, or the Slate cards that we're receiving. Same way when you're like, okay, the pharmaceutical company is paying for ad space on CNN. I wonder why CNN thinks the COVID vaccination's so great.
Right. Yeah, and we had a lot of criticism on that during COVID. Like, obviously they keep talking about it because Pfizer and Moderna and the other ones were pushing that. And we talk about this too. I mean, this weekend we had the No Kings rally,
right.
And it was like everyone's, oh, who's funding this, and this is all fake, and are these people paid, and all these things, and now there's been some fairly good reporting, like this money is coming from people that live in China, some of them which are U.S. citizens, right, that are living in China, and they're funding these different protesters. They have their paid people that are salary, essentially, to go to different cities and fund, organize, and have protesters. So, we criticize it. I think that it would be good to have more disclosure, and the fact that you have to log into a website and download multiple CSVs or PDFs and be like, hey, this pack has started with this, and then it funneled to this, and then it funneled to that, and it funneled to this. It's kind of like, okay, doesn't seem very transparent. Technically, it's following all the rules, but anyways, that's our spiel on that. It looks like, as far as the runoffs go, though, it in the first week or so. What's up?
I want to take this moment to give a shout out.
Okay.
To Ryan Binkley.
Yes, I was just
Okay, good.
Go for it.
You go for it. Oh no! I don't want to steal your
I was gonna say, like, look, right after the runoff, all the dust settled. It was like, hey, this is who we have left, right? And a lot of people have stepped up. I really see it as stepping up, not stepping down. It's like they looked at the terrain. And not to say that, hey, somebody's dropping out because they couldn't win. They very well could. We've seen it happen before, right? It's that they know that by stepping down, what people are doing, the people that are stepping down, what they're doing is they are giving a longer and stronger runway for the Republican Party to not waste a bunch of time and money and a bunch of infighting that inevitably will happen, a bunch of bad name calling and more feuds that have actually nothing to do with the race come up and surface that will follow us to the general election. People are making the adult decision to say, hey, look, you know what? Now's not my time, or this is what the people have chosen, or whatever the reason is. Let's just move forward as a team we have a few more runoffs for the election. Let's get those settled and then move into the general election more united as a party. And there's been Ryan Binkley. There's been several throughout that are like, you know what? Like, we could drag this whole thing out and then also force a recount and then also pay the lawyers to duke it out on hanging chads or whatever, mail-in ballots that don't count or whatever, however the thing wants to go. But they're like, you know what? Let's just not do that. And I find that like the most honorable thing to do. Like, I'm very impressed by that.
I agree. Ryan Binkley put a bunch of his own money into his campaign. And it takes a lot of character, in my opinion, to do something like that and be able to take a step back and humble yourself and say, look, you know what? Am I in the runoff? Yes, but the voters almost elected my opponent without a runoff. I have a 20-some-odd point gap. I'm going to just respectfully bow out and get behind my political opponent. So congratulations to Jace Yarborough. But I think that Ryan Binkley definitely deserves a lot of credit for being, a strong person of character to do something along those lines. But with the runoff upcoming, just as a reminder, because we're less than a month away from when you need to be registered to vote for the runoff, if you've moved or anything along those lines. April 27th is your last day to register to vote for the runoff. Early voting for the runoff starts on May 18th, with election day for the runoff being May 26th. So still have plenty of time, but make sure if you've moved or anything along those lines, you go ahead and you re-register to vote before April 27th.
Right, and with that runoff, I wouldn't wait till that day, but if you do, realize that there's not a ton of voting locations. It's not like a general election, which you've probably found out, but they're not going to have a ton of voting locations. So it's like, if you might need to drive a little bit, so don't just think like, oh yeah, it's going to be at the elementary school that it normally is at.
Right.
It probably won't be. It's going to be a little bit out of the way, and so that is something to consider on the runoff elections.
We'll talk about it more as it gets closer, but have it on your radar. That's when it's coming up. Kyle, do you have any Kyle's closing thoughts?
I think we should talk about
Kyle's
Iran.
current events.
Yeah, I think we should get into Iran a little bit.
What about Iran?
It's a constant fluctuating situation. But I don't want to just talk about like Iran and all the different little things that's going on, but I want to talk about doom and gloom and polling with this entire situation, because if you turn on CNN or whatever, it's like it depends on what the actual questions were on the polling, and Republicans are going to get swept, and his Trump's approval is at an all-time low, and all these different things, and it's like I just want to point out that we're about to go into April, so we have so many months until the midterm, right? We have a lot of time until we roll into the midterm.
7 months.
Right. That's in the news cycle world, where a long news cycle is 4 days. That is a long time. And
yeah. Remember Venezuela?
Kind of.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
Kind of, and it was such a success, but here is the thing: it was a massive success, and now Venezuela, you listen to Mark Rubio and JD Vance talk about like they have made now more money for their country in the past 2 months than they have almost all of 2025. That's gonna help the people of that country, and we're going to now be able to actually send people back to Venezuela that were trying to escape communism and that regime that was there. Very, very good operation, right? And I think that Americans in general want Amazon delivery, one purchase, don't even ask me what credit card I want it on, just bring it to my door, right? And it's like, okay, the issue here is that like, yes, Iran is not Venezuela, right? And it's going to take a little bit longer, regardless of what happens, right? We would love the outcome to be awesome, right? But regardless of what happens, we have such a long runway, and all I hear is like doom and gloom from everybody. Right? And it's like, look, it could go bad. You never know what they're going to do. They could do boots on the ground, and it's this big situation. My point is that it's just like all I hear is negativity, but it's with this almost teenage like idea of like I'm not getting everything I wanted. And then I ask people, like in messaging or like basically I'm like, so like but look, what are you talking about? Oh well, we didn't get like mass deportation. I'm like, okay, cool. Like what has happened in the last year compared to the last 40 years in this country?
Right.
Negative net migration.
I mean,
for the first time.
I'm glad to hear this, because you were pretty black-pilled at some point about the lack of mass deportation.
I was. Yes.
I'm just what changed your viewpoint on that?
My viewpoint has changed is that I understand the point that they're kind of the conversation that I won't bring up right now, but like, look, the operation in Minnesota was bad. It was poorly executed.
Kristi Noem did a terrible job with it.
It was a effing clown show.
She's probably distracted by her husband, but...
Right, so like she got the husband thing. She also has like this stud of a man that she's like working in with an office, which is like why you should just always keep doors open in the office. But
you
it's
think
like
he's a stud, huh?
I mean, he's a pretty good looking dude. Yeah, I think so. Like, give him his props, right? Someone would say I'm a good looking dude, right?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard it said before.
So my point being is that, like, okay, you've seen the message, like, stop talking about mass deportations, and it's like, we can't take the X conversation out to the public sphere and expect that to actually work.
Right.
Because the X conversation is like, I understand, like, when someone sends me a meme or someone says something on X, you have to filter it through, like, this is partially a joke. I understand you're exaggerating. I understand that you are in a community of, you feel almost sheltered, so, like, you can be a little bit over the top, but, like, you take those messages and, like, hey, it's like, I get where you're coming from, but that's realistically not going to happen ever. So, like, if it's never even going to happen, why are we even crying about that it's not happening?
Social media is not real life.
Exactly. And so there's like a consecutive thing. Like, people are, and again, these aren't hardcore Republicans, people are bitching about the gas price. I don't like that the gas price is high. However, look at the average price over Biden when the Ukraine war kicked off, and what did they do about it, right? And look at the averages, right?
Ultimately, they elected Trump.
Ultimately, they elected Trump, and we're on 30 days now of this operation, right? And it's like, the payoff, it could be huge. It's like, so my thing is this: so are you willing? And this is the ultimate thing. It's like, okay, so you're willing to trade Iran, which, okay, albeit they cannot strike the United States of America with their current ballistic missiles, which, by the way, have almost doubled overnight as far as the range. Well, it only reached 2,000 miles, but all of a sudden it's like 4,000 miles or wherever the double was, right? All of a sudden they're trying to hit Diego Garcia, which could never hit. Now all of a sudden there's a lot of European countries that can now be. So my point is like, yes, did they have a nuclear weapon? No. Were they putting the component parts together? Obviously, yes. Right? And if anyone's hearing this guy, Joe Kent, which I do respect, and I do respect his wife. I mean, they're both, like, absolute pipe hitters. I mean, they're very strong people, and they have done a lot for this country. They say that there was some kind of religious vow that they weren't going to make nuclear weapons. It's like, how ignorant can you absolutely be to believe that they weren't after nuclear weapons? Besides that, it's like, did you want to wait until they had 1,000 missiles, 10,000 missiles? How many drones did you want these people to have before ultimately we were going to have to face this? I've said it last time we spoke with our guest. We are living in a time where people didn't make hard decisions, and so our lives are harder because of it. And mainly, I'm talking about spending, the debt. There's a lot of other issues, but it's like, why don't we just make the hard issues now? Why don't we just bite the bullet? And maybe it's going to take a couple more weeks. Maybe it's going to take a couple more months. But again, we have 7 months until the midterms. And if this all does work out, we do come to some kind of negotiated peace, and all of a sudden Iranian oil, which everyone wants, is going to now be in the market nationally, like, or around the world. It's like, okay, what are you going to be saying when, oil prices are now down to $50 or $60 a barrel? If that does happen, are you going to show up and vote? Are you going to post something on social media about how much you love Trump or the decisions that this administration is making? I don't know.
You heard it first. Kyle is calling for boots on the ground. No.
I'm calling for some boots on the ground. I mean, there are people. Look, everyone's like, our sons and daughters. Like, I agree. I don't want the Army and the Marines on the ground, but there are special operations men that they do not feel sorry for them. That's what they want to do. And it's like, if we need to go take out somebody, if we need to go kidnap their family, if we need to go hit a certain target, like, these people, these men, that's what they want to do. And it's like, if that makes the American, I call it the American empire, but the American U.S. petrodollar stronger, that's what gives us a better life, and that's what we need to do.
I fear that politically we've already lost Iran. And I'm not saying from a military operation standpoint. I'm talking about in the November election. I will just say as a slight soapbox diatribe, I am so tired of every political decision being tied to the next upcoming election.
Yes.
I don't want elected officials that think that way.
Yeah.
I want elected officials that are put into place that are trying to make the best decisions that they have before them at that time, regardless of whether it will get them reelected or not. As a matter of fact, if you're making the right choice, look, there were, I remember when Greg Abbott opened Texas up after COVID, and there were people calling him a Neanderthal, and he was going to kill tens of thousands of Texans were going to die because Greg Abbott opened up COVID. That was a big political risk for him. The political safe thing for him to have done would just to be kind of let it peter out, let the restrictions peter out like a lot of the other states did.
Right.
The thing that took political courage is to say, I've looked at the science, I'm making what I think is the best decision for Texans, we're reopening, I think it's going to be fine.
Right.
That was a political risk. He was right. So he gets rewarded for that, right? My problem with so much of these politicians is I don't think that they think that way. They just think about their next election and doing whatever they need to do to get to their next election.
Right.
So there's a part of me that hates even talking about the effect that Iran is going to have on the midterms. But I worry that because the Trump administration, right now Americans are feeling pain from the military action in Iran. Gas prices are up.
Yep.
The stock market's volatile. You know, there's uncertainty, there's fear. The negative consequences are currently being borne by Americans because of the military action in Iran. It costs $30 more a tank for me to fill my car up.
Right.
I notice that for sure every time I go to fill up.
Yep. Absolutely.
I think that the Trump administration has done a subpar job. I know, big, fancy, big, bold take on social media. He has done the administration has done a subpar job of making Americans understand the benefit for the cost.
Right.
They're paying the cost, but I don't think that anywhere near enough was done by the Trump administration to justify why Americans need to bear this burden right now. I don't think from Venezuela, it didn't matter. There was no cost to Americans.
Right, we
kind of woke up one day and there was like this cool video and we found out we have these awesome weapons and holy crap, we can just go like
kidnap someone and
kidnap a world leader in the middle of the night and there are zero consequences.
Yep.
Sweet.
Number 2 takes over and we're actually pumping more oil out of that country now than ever.
But I think this is the reason that you have so many conspiracy theories about Iran. Well, you have so many people saying, "Oh, we're there for Israel. Oh, we're there because Israel wanted us to do it."
Really getting under my skin.
Well, hey, here's the thing: if Trump doesn't do a good enough job on the outset of proving to Americans why we need to go in, and he had the time to do it, right? I mean, you made the point. I think the last podcast, you can't move all the chess pieces into place to strike in Iran without some heads-up warning.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the whole world could see carrier groups and tankers and fighter jets and all of that being repositioned to that part of the world.
Right.
There was no surprise that there was a military buildup there.
Plus all the Marines and sailors are telling strippers, apparently, that they're being employed.
Right.
So fucking idiots.
But what do you want?
No, but everyone's like, oh my god, I can't believe that's happening. Like, that's literally espionage 101 is like, get information from the local strippers.
Right. So here's the thing. The Trump administration had a responsibility to convince the Americans that there was a big enough gain for the cost that they were going to bear. And that didn't happen. And I blame Trump and I blame Pete Hegseth because it's this weird thing. I saw a press conference that Hegseth did with a general.
He does one every morning at 9 o'clock.
And you could not have a more stark difference in performance and professionalism, right? You have these generals that are understated They professionally answer the questions. They're not braggadocious. They're not sitting up there trying to be the biggest macho man that they can be. They're up there answering the questions and again, providing professional, humble responses.
Sure.
Then you have Pete Hegseth up there, and he's beating his chest, figuratively, and talking about how great we are, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, it's just like all this stuff, and it's just like, hey man, if you're trying to convince Americans that the Iranians are a threat to us, and they're such a threat to us that we have to take military action that's going to take money away from our families because it's going to cost more for us to live, brother, you better not sit up there and tell me that you're going to kick their ass with no problems and that this is going to be totally fine, no big deal, we're just going to sweep in. Because then as I'm hearing that, I'm like, then why am I paying $30 more per tank of gas?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are thinking that. I mean, it is, I listen to it every single morning. Like, that is what I'm listening to, is the Pentagon brief every single morning. It is braggadocious in a certain sense. The admiral sitting next to him definitely, or his general actually, sitting next to him is not. I don't know. I think for his position and who he is, I think it's whatever. He's handling the questions well, but yes, I agree. Like, I agree that the cause and effect, or I guess the risk versus reward for this whole thing is not being properly portrayed. But I think they're doing that because they don't actually, like, at first they started leading with, or they started hinting at, oh yeah, we're going to free the Iranian people, right? But like after like week 2, they were like, let's cool it on that one because we don't really know. We had briefly had that conversation with our last guest. It's like, hey, the IRGC, someone in that main vein might end up taking over this thing, right? If a uprising doesn't, I think them killing 30,000 of their own citizens kind of quash that, again, unless we just drop a bunch of weapons in there. But I don't think we really care to do that. But regardless, I think the big story of like the petrodollar, this is going to negatively affect China. It's going to remove their options. Our neighbors, the Saudis, UAE, Qatar, all these people, even Iraq and Kuwait, they trade their oil in our dollars because we say we are going to protect you. It's also, if you don't, we're going to deny you access to the world. And so with Iran having proxies in all these countries and political issues in all these different countries, and yes, they're attacking Israel, but really, I mean, there's huge proxy wars going on over there. They're not saying this out loud. They are tonight. The UAE is now announcing, no, we are going to open up the Strait of Hormuz and we will have military action. Saudi Arabia is stepping up just last night, saying that we are going to have military action with the United States. We will open up the Strait of Hormuz. They're finally stepping forward. They don't like Iran as just as much as us because Iran also affects their standing in the world. If Saudi Arabia has for the longest time controlled OPEC, everyone lives and breathes by their production number. If Iran says, no, we're actually going to close the Strait of Hormuz, all of a sudden Saudi Arabia is almost irrelevant compared to how much Iran can control the world energy supply. That makes Qatar and the UAE now more willing to negotiate with Iran and maybe even align with Iran, which Saudi Arabia can't have. There's all these different things that, one, Americans don't care about. I don't even know they would care about if Pete Hegseth, sat up there and said, but it's like, those are important things. Those are the realities of the world that we're living in. Like, we have a 30-year mortgage and we have a quality of life that we do because we control the seas. Everything is traded in US dollars. People in Europe, they want to buy oil. They have to trade in between in commodities and everything in US dollars. It's like, these things are very important. If those things go away, if we just decide to say, hey, you know what, like, you guys do you and everything is cool, we're good. It's like our quality of life is going to. You think that oh my gosh, $4 a gallon is really bad. It is bad. It's nothing if we lose the petrodollar. It is nothing compared if we lose the petrodollar. Second point, I'm going to rag on Democrats. We would not be in this situation if since the late 70s, every single oil refinery that was ever put up for a permit was not absolutely squashed. Mm-hmm. Every time an LNG refinery, an oil refinery, since the fracking situation has come around, and we have all this beautiful, really clean, light crude oil that we can refine, but we have to build new refineries because our old refineries are the heavy stuff, and that's what comes from Venezuela. It's like we wouldn't be in this situation if for 50 years now, this would not come up of every time a company wants to build a refinery, they run into the EPA and they run into all kinds of issues, and they have to pay how many lawyers to eventually just lose, and then they'll say, oh, well, actually, they actually haven't even wanted to do that for almost 25 years. They gave up.
Right.
They have turned away from even trying to build these things in the United States because they know that it's okay, cool, Trump's cool with it, he's only here for so long. George Bush is cool with it, but he's only here for so long. You're making a multi-million, maybe even billion-dollar investment. You can't get halfway through with it. You can't go to your stockholders and the board and say, hey, let's build this thing and let's try to get it done really quick. If it's not done, if it's not producing, the next administration could just say no. We saw it with the Keystone Pipeline. We've seen it with all these different things of we're going from administration to administration, turning everything over. It's making everything wildly unstable. This is making our country, this is a very obvious open wound, is the political back and forth. We're in this situation of high gas prices because of the political instability in our country and the great divide that we have over this.
Correct.
That's my soapbox.
That's a good soapbox. Mine is still, man, to your point, there's no way you're going to be able to, I don't think there's any way that you get Americans to be willing to pay more in gas right now to protect petrodollar.
No.
And this goes back to the Trump administration again. To their credit, a lot of people don't give them credit for this. The Bush administration actually sold everybody on Afghanistan and Iraq.
Weapons of mass, yeah.
Yeah, before we went in, they sold people on it. They didn't just go in and try to backpedal into why we were there. And so the Trump administration made very little or weak attempts to do that. And so my concern is that I don't think it matters let's just be, I don't think there's any way that you can have a regime change in Iran where you're not going to have some sort of insurgency or that sort of stuff going on in November. Like, I don't see a way that you just install a new regime in Iran and everything is peaceful there come November.
No. I mean, if it's RIGC, there's still going to be unrest because the people aren't going to be happy with that. Probably rightfully so. But then if some weird situation, we make a deal with whoever Trump is talking to, and maybe like that general or whoever controls that little portion next to the Strait of Hormuz, they're going to be in a big conflict as well. And we're still going to be, airstrike. Like, they're still good. Yeah. No, there's not a good answer here.
I think that even if Trump were to strike a deal with Iran, I think that the mainstream media in this country would sell it as a loss.
Yeah.
They'd say, oh, Trump got beat by the Strait of Hormuz, and he tuck-tailed and ran, and there was no real plan, and we didn't regime change, so it's a loss.
Right.
What a waste! All these things. That's how Iran will be spun by the media.
Yeah.
And you'll have your Tucker Carlsons and Candace Owenses and Megyn Kelly's of the world that will sit there and parrot whatever the mainstream media is saying because they want to attack or do whatever they're going to weirdness do. So it's not going to be a win for the Trump administration. if they do regime change, it's not going to be peaceful by the time we get to November. So all these same people are going to be complaining that this is another Iraq, this is another Afghanistan.
And
we went in there,
yeah.
we tried to regime change, but here we have the terrorist attacks and the terrorist violence and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. It's like, well,
I just don't. I mean,
over there.
I don't see it. I don't see a way that Iran is a positive going into November,
Right.
unless somehow miraculously there is a regime change with the old, a non-Islamic state running Iran,
Yeah.
and somehow they're able to fight back the insurgents or do whatever they need to where it's not in the news cycle here. I just think that's very, very far-fetched.
Very low percentage
So
of all.
Iran is going even if gas prices are back to $2.50 a gallon, I think you're still going to see, the Iran situation is a net negative in November.
Well, yes. So historically, though, he's supposed to lose the House, right? It's a second. I mean, like historically speaking.
Yeah, but historically, you don't flip 5 seats in Texas to safeguard that, right?
Right, and then and then California, and then Virginia, maybe, and then not for for sure. But so there is that. So like yes, on the mainstream media, no matter what, it's like if you get regime change, it's bad because we're imperialists. If we don't get it, then he's a loser. I think that he can salvage this if, and we're just consumer society, like if gas prices are cheap. Like if gas prices are cheap and their people are not feeling it, and then he can get his guy in there and they can do the rate cuts appropriately, not crazy, not down to zero, but like, 0.75 and then 0.25 or something like that. Like
a 0.75 drop?
0.75, yeah, I think
that's pretty big.
It's pretty big, but I think that is what is going to, generally speaking, is going to happen. Give me plus or minus 0.5 on that. I think that's what the current guy does not like Trump. He's fighting Trump. There's every signal to cut more, but he won't. People are worried about inflation. Inflation has only been driven in the last couple of weeks anyway because of high gas prices. That's not an inflationary driver as far as like fiat currency and whatnot. But anyways, I think that he can sugarcoat this. My point is, I think he can sugarcoat this if gas prices are low, because that's what everyone's complaining about. That is what everyone cares about in the Middle East. That is what he cares about in the Middle East. He said we should have taken the oil. If he can get some kind of deal where all of a sudden Iranian oil is now on the open market and not going directly, at least being bid on, not going directly to China at a discounted rate, where it's like it's helping Iran, it's helping China, and also hurting us because that oil is not technically on the market. I think that's bad. But low gas prices, I think that we can salvage this and be like, hey, look, the guy that's like wanted to build nuclear weapons, I still feel it's a win. Like I still feel like even if he backs away and the strait just opens up, I still feel like they did use up all their missiles. We are 99% of their missiles, it seems like. We destroyed their infrastructure as far as military capacity. We didn't get their which they have stated they had. They don't, it's technically they still have it though. It's still buried under a mountain. It's just like they keep bombing it, so they can't get to it. But like technically, they could always dig it up. Like it's not going anywhere, right? The half-life is forever, so they could get it back. But as far as the military-industrial complex of Iran, like that is not, that's not there anymore. Like they are devastated. That's why when I see people talk about, Iran can emerge stronger from this and they're actually going to win. It's like, how are you winning when everyone on the top of your pyramid is dead and you can no longer build out a military? Like, you are definitely losing. By the way, everyone that had a Ukrainian flag in their profile and everything like that, this is hurting Russia as well. This is hurting. Russia got so much at the beginning, and they still did to this day, get a lot of drones from Iran. They were taking Iranian oil and selling it to buy via land to China. This is isolating Russia. And everyone talks about the whole like, oh my gosh, they just took away the sanctions. It's like, yeah, they took away the sanctions. It's like for Iran, oh my gosh, they're making so much money. It's like, where is that money going? That is going into holding accounts in these other countries. And even if it is in Iran, what can they do with it? They can do very little with it, right? They can kind of pay their soldiers still. I don't know if anyone heard that, but like military gets paid through like Navy Federal essentially. They start bombing the different places where their soldiers are getting paid for. Very tough situation. Anyways, Republicans, stop being so doom and gloom about this. This needed to happen on our time. You did not want to wait around and wait for this regime to get stronger and have more missiles and more drones and more mine laying and eventually a nuclear weapon. Like, there is no doubt how Pakistan has nuclear weapons. How hard would it have been to Iran, they share a border, to get a few of those, to hire a few of those scientists to bring in to finally enrich all their uranium to the levels that need it? It would not. That's not a wild idea. It's like us hiring someone from Canada. It's not a wild idea for that to happen. And at that point, then the history would have been, oh, Trump let them get a nuclear weapon.
I agree with you. I think it was the right move. I think getting rid of the current regime is the right move. I think getting rid of the Shia Islamic State of Iran and returning it back to a secular Iran, the Persian Iran, is the best thing for the world. Mm-hmm. I think it's the best thing for us. It's the best thing for our allies, which includes Israel, because they are an ally of ours. And just because something benefits Israel doesn't mean it's a bad thing, Tucker. Right. But I would like to see better messaging, and it's not even. I hate even like just good communication. Right. Like I want to see good communication from the White House about this. I don't want to see, and I know I'm in the minority about this. I don't want to see the press secretary going on fighting the press. I'm not impressed by that. I don't care. Like, go on there and own the lib reporter. Like, what? Who cares? Yeah. If you want to go do that, go get some podcast. But I want to see somebody up there professionally answering questions, providing information, not sitting there and trying to antagonize and get these little sound clips. I want to see a Secretary of Defense that's going to look as professional as the general that he or she is standing next to. Man, I miss the Condoleezza Rice days. I know it's Secretary of State, right? I miss the Condoleezza Rice days. I miss having somebody like that you're like, this person is one of the absolute smartest individuals in the world and highest experts in this area, and they're the ones lead. This is why Marco Rubio's stock has skyrocketed, because he just goes and does a good job. He doesn't have all this braggadocio that he does like everybody else. And so what Americans see is just a really well-informed and competent, highly qualified Secretary of State, and they compare him to some of these other influencer types within the administration, and it makes Marco look even better, makes him look more statesmanlike. Like I think this is part of the whole rise of Marco that we're seeing politically. That's what I want. We said this when we did a podcast during during the start of the administration, right? Mm-hmm. At the start of 2025, when we're talking about what we wanted, and I was like, I just want competence. Yeah. I just want a lot of competent people doing a good job. If we could just give the American people, and I say we as Republicans, like just competent, good, this is what we largely have in Texas. Yeah. This is the reason that Republicans in Texas have been so strong, because I remember when we had a Democrat governor. Right? I don't. Yeah. I remember Ann Richards. Yeah, and you know what happened is Ann Richards got replaced by George W. Bush. And he ran an incredibly competent organization when he was the governor. Mm-hmm. And then he handed that over to Rick Perry. And Rick Perry ran an incredibly competent government for the state of Texas. And then he handed that over to Greg Abbott. And where was Greg Abbott before that? He was the Attorney General of the state of Texas after he'd been on the Texas Supreme Court. very qualified, very competent, just doing a great job.
Yeah.
And before that, we had John Cornyn. Again, another very qualified attorney general, doing a great job, just being a good, competent person. He gets rewarded by going to the Senate. You know, like we in this state had, when Texas flipped to red, and you saw like, was it Phil Graham became a Republican? We had Kay Bailey Hutchison. That was like the mid to late 90s.
Okay.
There are senators. You start having people flip from Democrat to Republican. We had a really professional, competent bunch of people running the state, and we built up this really strong Republican base in the state of Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now there's the Texas miracle. Our economy's great. People are flocking here. It wasn't because people were loud influencer, get famous types. It's because they just did a good job with what they were doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if we would just ever get back to that and having competence and being legitimately qualified for the position was the most important thing, and not the fact that you're RFK Jr. and you're gonna ban Wheaties or whatever it is that he wants to do. Like, if you're not this social media influencer type of crap, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, how many people are less excited about them running the FBI now, right?
Yeah, I think those are probably the two most blatant examples for sure. I mean, Pete Hegseth has been quite a surprise. I mean, I think that this operation has been ran very, very nicely. Yes, he has the clips. I will say I watched literally the entire hour, and I've watched every hour since this thing has kicked off. And yes, he has his opening statement, and and it's like ends with a prayer and all these things. But I mean, I think he's been very confident, especially coming from he's just a Fox anchor. It's like, well, no, actually, he was a service member. Like he has competence in this, maybe not as a general, but I think he's done fairly well for this. But I think he does that because he leans on people around him, which is great. That's what
right.
you want as a good leader.
I
People
think
in the Senate or the House could really tone it down, because they are negatively affecting the party. Mm-hmm. I think with just all their, it's just like, why are you talking right now? Because you're not delivering on anything, yet you have it's like the person hey, you want to get pizza? No, I don't want that. Okay, what do you want? I don't know, but not that. It's like, stop talking. Please stop talking. You're not adding anything to this conversation. You don't have not only Some people are talking and they have a solution, but I'm like, yeah, but you also don't have any political power. Yeah, you're a representative, but you don't raise any money. You're not the whip. You don't have a coalition. You don't have literally anything. So what are you doing? Why are you just always on X screaming about this or that? Things need to talk about. Yes, we need to bring up these issues, but at the same time, it's just a little too much. And I think that is creating a negative environment where people are just kind of stepping away from the party that were maybe first-time Republican voters, but they stepped in and now they're receiving all what they just feel is negativity.
Just bleeding Trump voters.
Yes.
That's my fear.
Yeah.
We're just But the thing is, though, is I don't think that we're bleeding Trump voters because of anything that Congress or the Senate's doing. I think we're bleeding Trump voters because of Trump. He's the one that's responsible for drawing them here and retaining them.
Right.
And again, and I go back to this is the problem with Iran. I don't think that Pete Hegseth's ego would allow him to legitimately say that Iran poses a threat to America. I don't think that Pete Hegseth can go up there and be like, yeah, you should be afraid of Iran. You should be worried about Iran, because here's how they can harm us. Because I think Pete Hegseth is no, we're the best. Our military's the best. They're going to kick everyone's ass. There's no way. Iran can't possibly hurt us. We're the biggest. We're the baddest. We're the strongest. And Jesus is on our side. There's nothing that Iran can do to us.
That's the best part. Jesus on our side.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that Pete Hegseth can sit there and say, look, Iran can do this, and this to us. Like, you should, again, going back to it, Americans are not going to be willing to take the bullet of higher gas prices, and I'm probably a bad analogy. They're not going to bear the cost of higher gas prices without something. Like, what am I getting out of this?
Right.
And the petrodollar is not going to cut it, and appeasing our allies isn't going to cut it. It's a nuclear Iran. The best argument is that these guys were trying to build nukes, and they're trying to build missiles, and they're trying to harm us, and we have to get to them before they can do that. Because the moment that they have an ICBM that can reach our allies in Europe or our bases in certain places, and they can put a nuke on that, then we have no ability to control them at that point.
Ultimately, yes. Ultimately, that is the biggest. That's like the biggest thing. Is like because look at how we talk to North Korea.
Right.
We don't say shit in North Korea because we're like, whoa, he's crazy.
Yeah, do whatever you want to your people.
Yeah,
right?
like fine.
Just stay north of this line.
Yep.
Because they've got a nuke.
And that was that right there is the perfect example. It just sums it all up. It's like in 1948 or whenever that thing kicked off. It was like we had millions of men that were just coming home from World War II, for lack of better terms, they were all blooded, and it was like we could have handled that situation then. And we just said, well, look, we just got out of a really bad war. Like, it was tough. Like, I'm not saying it wasn't, but I'm just saying, like, that was a decision at the time. That was a political decision at the time to not take on the issue that we did not see. Obviously, you can't, you don't have a crystal ball, but it's like, we didn't handle that issue now. We are paying for that. We'll be paying that forever because we have to keep people there stationed in South Korea. South Koreans are barely doing it for themselves. Yes, they have a standing military and everything, but like it's us. Like we're developing the weapons. We have 2 or 3 army groups over there. Like it's us, right? And it's like if we don't make that tough decision with Iran, that's what's going to happen. And when that happens, though, it's a little bit different because South Korea now has an economy that we care about. It didn't at the time. The other Arab countries over there have things we care about. Mm-hmm. If we can't protect them and now they have a nuclear weapon pointed at them, 2 things. 1, they don't care what we have to say anymore. Right? That person has a nuclear weapon. They've been hitting us with drones. They can hit us with this nuclear weapon. I don't care about your aircraft carriers. 2, now they're going to want nukes.
Yeah, they're all nuclear states.
Everyone immediately.
The moment that Iran confirmed to have a nuke, Saudi Arabia would have a nuke a year later.
Yes.
It's just like that would 100% happen. But here's the problem. I mean, this goes back to my issue, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but you and I know this because we've done our own research into this. Right, we do stupid things like read white papers and stuff like that to inform ourselves about this.
That's pretty.
We don't know this because it's not a matter of we're not regurgitating White House talking points.
Right.
Because there haven't been coherent White House talking points on this.
No.
And so when we're talking about November, when we're talking about winning the political battle, and not we've clearly won the military action, but to win the political battle at home. Again, I think that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump have done a subpar job of making the sale to the American public as to why we did this in the first place. And so now, even though it's a win for most people in America, well, what did we actually win?
Right.
How is my life? My day-to-day life is not affected by this at all. There was a few months there where my gas prices were much higher. I didn't get to go on summer vacation with my family because everything was more expensive in March and April, so I couldn't afford to go to wherever I wanted to in June. But other than that, how is my life any better before and after the military action in Iran?
Yeah.
And if the White House and the Secretary of Defense cannot convince the American people of that, then it doesn't matter how well we do over there. It'll be a loss in November.
Yeah, they definitely 100% need to. And it was like before this started, gas prices was in DFW was like $2.75 or something. So like you would physically have to be like, look, gas prices are now $2.50.
Right.
Right, and then be like,
It's $1.99 a gallon.
exactly, and it's like, okay, like that is what it's gonna take to literally like grab people by the face, like look at the price on the like if it's something intangible, yeah, it doesn't matter, and that honestly is an issue for our society of like we're going to the next the next election and we don't have a 100-year plan and we don't like it's like these things are like it's dragging us down. It's dragging us down.
Well, the maddening fact, the hardest thing, the thing that frustrates me the most, is that we're in the right to do this.
Yes.
And the
100%.
evidence is there. If you don't know, Iran has nuclear materials. They claim that it's just for civilian use. Oh, we just want to have nuclear power plants like other countries in the world do. Well, to have those, you need to enrich uranium way down here. If you want a nuclear weapon, you got to enrich it way up here. Iran's like right here. They're like 60, 70%
Right.
enrichment. There is absolutely no reason at all for legitimate civilian purposes to enrich uranium or plutonium or whatever other nuclear materials that high. The reason, it's incredibly expensive to enrich it that much. There's no reason to do it other than you're trying to build a nuke. So it is undisputable, based on just those very basic facts, that Iran is trying to develop a nuclear weapon. They are also trying to develop long-range missiles. Again, we talked about, it has been shown in this conflict that they have missiles that can go 4,000 miles out, right? Before it was 2,000. That's not a dispute. There is no reason to have a missile that goes 4,000 miles unless you're trying to put a nuke on top of it, because it's not practically useful. You're not going to have a conflict with a country 4,000 miles away where you're going to be sending like barrages of these long-range missiles with conventional warheads on top of it. You only build these things because you want to put a nuclear warhead on top of it. Mm-hmm. This is not in dispute. So if you're listening to this, that's the very basic, easy, undisputable facts about Iran trying to build a nuke. The reason that we're there is to stop them from doing that. Easy. Because if they're able to do that, it is a threat to us, it's a threat to our allies around the world, it's a threat to our troops around the world, it's a threat to our aircraft carriers out at sea. You don't want Iran with a nuke. That's not even including the concern of them being the #1 state sponsor of terror. And boy, what a great terror device it would be if you could hand some people a nuke that they could go detonate in some European city, or they could go detonate in Saudi Arabia or in Qatar or in Tel Aviv or wherever they would want to do that. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, that's why we're there. And
right.
And I'm sorry, but I feel like that's the right choice.
Yeah.
To your point, it's the difficult thing that needs to be done. Presidents for 40 years have been saying that we need to do something about Iran. Right. Trump did it. It was the right call. He should have done that. But I don't think that he's done a good job of explaining that to the American people. I don't think that Pete Hegseth has done a good job of explaining that to the American people. And so I feel like the American people are rightfully confused as to why they're there and to why they need to be paying more per gallon for this military action.
Yeah, no, 100%. They need to go on another podcast tour and really explain this. That I mean, it's a double-edged sword because they're going to get asked about. They have to answer for everything, but it's like, at the same time, that's what people want. There's a huge anxiety in the air. It's like, okay, go make your case. Like, go and make your case. Now they think that, hey, in a couple of weeks, this we'll settle this, whatever that looks like, and then we'll move on. And again, we'll have that long runway to get to the midterms, and then right before the midterms, we'll do some kind of big tour, and that might work out. But I guess that's if it does work out. But
But that only matters again if you go make the pitch to people as to why we won.
Right.
Hey, we won over there. We went in there. We eliminated to your point, we eliminated their long-range missile program. We decimated their nuclear program. We wiped out 2 levels of their leadership, and we are now working with a far more reasonable, pliable group who are allowing international observers to go have free reign over the country to make sure that they're not doing that. They've pledged that they're not going to be developing this material. They've pledged that to the extent that they want to have a domestic nuclear program, that other countries will be providing them with the materials to do that. Like, go make the sell as to why we won after we won. But the thing is I fear that that's not going to happen. I think we'll get some truth social messages, and then we'll be on to something else.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean,
it'll be Trump dogging on teams in the World Cup or something like that.
Which I will be excited to see about that,
Yeah.
especially in Dallas.
All right. Well, we hit Iran. Do you have any other Kyle's current events?
I don't. That was pretty much. I just wanted to get that off my chest because I've been talking to so many people about this thing and just not glazing the Trump administration. Be like, no, everything's great, everything's fine. Like, we don't know if it's really fine, but at the same time, it's like, okay, yes, but these things needed to be done.
Right.
Like, these things needed to happen.
I mean,
sucks. Just sucks.
You talk about like not glazing the Trump administration. Another quick thought about that. Man, you can't dump on your allies for years and then expect that they're going to come help you. The Trump administration has been so antagonistic.
Oh, fuck NATO. No, they suck.
No, I like NATO. NATO's a great thing. They don't suck. NATO
Trump
doesn't
is the
suck.
reason they are now actually spending money
and
on
that's
themselves.
fine. But there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. And Trump, you can't sit there in international affairs and dump on your allies and then be surprised when they're not going to come back you. You can't expect them to do that.
From the beginning of this administration, even when the Houthis were acting up, which by the way, funded by Iran, there was, we all saw the leaked text messages. It's like, this has nothing to do with us. Almost all of that trade is for Europe, and they would not step up and protect their own shipping lanes. And so what had to happen? The American Navy had to go over there. The American taxpayer had to do it. The NATO is worthless. They are absolute. I mean, until they actually settle into this new right-wing coalition that they're building, their military is a joke. Their military spending they can't get an air wing up in the air. They don't have weapons that work. They spend their money on solar panels. This is when I started liking Trump. He went over there in his first term and sat down and said, what are you guys doing to actually be a military? And he talks about you're buying all this stuff from Russia, and I'm supposed to be protecting you from Russia. NATO could be cool. NATO could be great. But NATO and all these different countries are all looking out for themselves, and they don't see the importance of it. And it's like, Americans shouldn't see the importance of it either if they don't. They should leave, or they should go to Poland. They should pull out of Germany. The new, soon-to-be right-wing leaders, like, hey, all 40,000 people should, okay, bye. Just break all the leases, pull everything out. There's plenty of countries that would love to have us. Poland would like to have us. Romania would like to have us. Italy would like to have us. That's fine. Enjoy that. Bring them back to North Carolina. Bring them back to Virginia. Bring them back to Florida. That would be good for our economy. It's like we're constantly like, oh, well, we have to do this. It's like they don't even trade in our dollars as much anymore. They go to other countries and try to make deals around us. They don't let us into their economy. I agree with Trump on this 100%. They abuse us so much, and it's like we have to go over there and spend our time and our money and get deployed over there for I don't know what. They just do not pitch in. Like their people they just do not pitch. They don't believe in it. That's the problem is they just don't believe in it. They don't believe in NATO anymore, and that's fine. Like Russia, in a sense, is not the big bad monster they used to be. They almost rolled into Kiev, and then now they're in a trench warfare with a second world country. So it's like, yeah, I guess they really weren't. They're really not that big of an issue. We should roll back that alliance. That's my take on it. Seeing NATO in action, seeing the different militaries, and their neighbors.
It's one thing to diagnose a problem. It's another thing to properly address the solution.
Yeah.
It's really easy to point at the problems with NATO. And I don't disagree with your problems with NATO.
Yeah. It was very emotional too.
Right, but the problem is that there's more than one way to get to the desired outcome. Because the desired outcome is a better NATO. It's a better version of NATO.
Sure.
It's NATO doing what they're supposed to do. And again, I'm going to juxtapose Trump to Rubio. We all loved Rubio's speech. We all loved Rubio going over there and talking about our shared Western civilization and our shared values, and we all built this together, and it is great, and we should be proud of it. We want you to be proud of your country.
Sure.
Right? We all love that. That's great. Trump shooting off a text message talking about NATO sucking is not good. He might be right. He might be correct that NATO sucks.
Right.
But the thing about it is that's still not a good solution to the problem. I don't really care if this is a big problem that we have, and I'm going to say right now, like, we'll talk about Republican convention coming up. I almost don't care if you can diagnose a problem if you can't offer a workable solution that's not worse than the problem that you're trying to solve. And so there are more than one way to say, hey, look, there's deficiencies with NATO. Y'all need to spend more. Y'all need to do this. These are things that need to happen. But as Republicans, we act like the only way to solve it is to throw up two middle fingers, say F you, and we're going to, that's not the only solution. We don't handle that as adults. You don't solve your own problems that way. None of us do. And so I reject the notion that just because NATO's failing, that Trump's way of dealing with it is the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's tough negotiation. It's his way of negotiating. I mean, I know I do tough negotiation all the time.
Sure, I do too.
But for years, George Bush, Obama, Biden, they did the diplomatic thing. They did the, behind the closed doors. Hey, we need this, we need that. You guys got to step up. Mm-hmm. Most of you guys are below 2%. None of that worked because they knew that, well, no, we don't have to do that. We can make a promise that we'll get to 2.5% in 10 years. And then, just like we do with the, we're going to slow down spending in 10 years. Mm-hmm. And all of it's heavy loaded on year 7, 8, 9, and 10. And it's like, that's never going to happen.
Yeah, but
nothing ever was going to happen unless you do something like that, unless you make the threats and make clowns out of people.
Look, I don't have a problem with making threats. You do that diplomatically, though. There are ways that you do that and the ways that you don't. You don't go on to Truth Social and post crap. That's dumb.
It would be great if he didn't have to do that, but
he does. He doesn't have to.
They raised because he's been doing the way he's been doing first term and now this.
But
they have raised their spending over double.
Right.
Over double because of the way he's been handling the situation.
No,
Yes.
Him posting on social media. Well, here's the thing. It doesn't matter if they're increasing their spending if we're not benefiting from the increase of their spending.
No, they're buying stuff from us.
They're buying stuff. Well, look, man, I'm the one that makes that argument all the time, and you're the one that usually poo-poos on me saying, "Oh,
they're buying stuff from us." I mean,
I'm just saying, militarily, as an alliance, it doesn't benefit us if they increase their spending, but they're not using those things like in the situation right now. It's good. Hey, great, cool. Buy stuff from our military-industrial complex. But when it comes to actually a useful alliance like coming into the Strait of Hormuz, I can't blame them. I think they should be there. I think they absolutely should be there.
What do you think would motivate them to do that? They didn't show up when the Houthis were there. I mean, what situation would France or they're mostly Muslim countries at this point. England has been almost completely overrun through so many different places. Are you really going to have, hey, I need you guys to come on over here? And it's what would motivate them?
Right, because, first of all, the question is what kind of Muslim are they? Are they Sunni or are they Shia? Because there's a huge difference there. Because there's lots of other Muslim countries in the Middle East that are going to be helping us, like you talked about earlier in the podcast.
Yeah, they don't support the American.
Right, I'm just saying, sure. They've done that. They're now going to be doing that. So whether they're Muslim or not is not the defining characteristic of that.
It has a huge effect on their motivation.
It hasn't seemed to deter Saudi Arabia or Qatar, right?
They have a
Those
direct
are Muslim.
financial,
huge
financial issue with this. Yeah, absolutely.
So, but I'm saying the fact that they're Muslim is not the defining
but what would
characteristic.
motivate, in your mind, if it wasn't for Trump, what would be the proper motivation for
Again,
France or Europe to come over?
I can't sit here and guarantee, oh, you do this, and this is
Sure. No, yeah.
But what I'm saying, my point of this is that there is such a thing as proper diplomacy, and Europeans care about that a lot. Like, that is one of the things about European culture that we mock as Americans, is how devoted they are to these sort of archaic rules. And so you have something like Rubio going over there and making a pitch that, like, this is shared Western civilization. We are countries that continue, like, we are allies. We're supporting you. We're doing this stuff. Thank you for increasing your military spending.
Yeah.
You know, over blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
That improves your likelihood of them actually doing something. Like, you may disagree, but I think that if that is the tone, where it's, we're going to continue, look, mission accomplished in the fact that they're spending more money.
Yeah.
Great. So guess what? The tone doesn't have to remain the same antagonistic tone. Because politics is the art of making it easier to vote for you and harder to vote for your opponent. So when you're talking about international affairs, when you're talking about these other countries, part of it is domestic. Make it easy for people in those countries to support their political leaders coming to defend and aid America, or joining us with that sort of stuff. If I'm a citizen of one of those countries and Trump's talking crap about us on Truth Social, I'm not going to make any sort of pressure on my elected officials to go aid Americans who saved us from the Nazis and are fighting to prevent the Iranians. This goes back to the whole thing we talked about as far as making the argument to why this matters, right? Hey, if you're seen as an ally and you're seen as somebody that's not going to fly off and put some crap on social media, or is going to say something stupid in the White House, you know, because you're trying to be cute and do whatever, like, this is where some of Trump's worst urges do hinder his success.
Do you think he's right to be upset? I mean, we went with the operation, and we didn't want to tell anyone about it, right? We didn't want to, hey, EU, NATO, right? Because then obviously it's like, that's bad, right? But we started it, and then we invited, hey, we need your help, and really no one showed up. Like, there was talk of, like, possibly the French aircraft carrier or something coming over, but that turned out to really not be anything. And it's like the chicken or the egg. Like, did they increase the spending because of Trump, or was it, you know, just because of this or that? Or then it was like, okay, well, Rubio came over there and he's trying to bridge the gap. Right. And it's like, they're still not coming over. So it's like, where... You know,
I think the fact that our relationship with our NATO allies is so poor that we can't talk to them about the military operation before we do it is a real big problem. To me, that is to me probably close to as concerning as anything that Iran is doing, because the thing that has made us such a global power is that we did have influence in all of these countries. Sure. We did have alliances in all of these countries. And you're right. It used to be because they lived in existential dread of the Soviet Union. And we don't have that anymore, right? There is not the same existential dread of the Russian tanks rolling through, you know, Poland. I mean, I guess maybe the Polish still have it with how they are with their military, but I'm just saying for the rest of Europe. Well, then that means that we have to build new alliances. The Bush administration did that. Right. They were able to build those sort of coalitions to do that. I don't know if Obama did a good job of that. I doubt that he did. I think they thought he was sort of a neat little American, you know, pop icon. But I don't think that Trump has made concerted efforts to strengthen those alliances, to build those alliances, to give those people positive reasons to support us. That's a big concern of mine. Sure. I want U.S. bases in Germany. I like having an American presence all over the world. I like being the sole global superpower. Yeah. The moment that we start retreating back to our shores, we will become less of a global superpower. It's just like what happened in Africa, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. If we pull our influence out, if Europe pulls its influence out of Africa, something's going to fill it. And here comes China and here comes Russia to fill that void. That's my worry about all of this from a NATO standpoint. Is I do think that we're better off, the world is better off, the American global superpower is better off when we are controlling NATO.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I 100% agree. Like, it'd be awesome if NATO was something. I don't know, just something.
Even if it's just us exerting control over those European countries through that alliance.
Yeah.
I think that is a better thing than NATO not existing. If it's purely the fact that those countries are just reliant upon us for military whatever, and we don't have to worry about them forming other alliances, that is better for me than a situation where we don't have NATO.
I don't know. I feel like it'd be good if, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 of the big countries made one alliance, and then 2 or 3 of the other big countries made an alliance, and if anyone attacks the other one, then they can kind of go at it, and you know, that whole story.
That seems to have worked well in European history. Yeah. No, I get it. Like, I this is the hard thing about politics. Is like, is there a perfect situation where NATO is honoring us and they're listening to us and they're coming to our aid whenever they need it, plus they're spending more money on their military and they're doing all that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the dream scenario.
Mm.
But that's not. It's not a dichotomy. It's not an either or.
Right.
You know, there is a situation where NATO does devolve. And there is a situation where some of those countries decide that maybe they are better off allying with the Russians, or they are better allying with China, and maybe they're going to develop more ties with India. Like, all of these other countries are still out there and would love to steal our allies from us.
Sure.
China, India, Russia, they would absolutely love to be able to start picking off countries that ally with us and building a coalition with them.
Yeah.
I don't want that. Because I want one single global superpower, which is the United States of America.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyway, thank you for my Reagan era political.
It really was.
Yeah.
That's why we're gonna have to bring back powdered wigs so that we can have proper diplomacy.
Brother,
that's what it's gonna have to be.
If that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. But we did pretty well. We did pretty well with the Marshall Plan.
Yes. Yeah. That was solid. That definitely helped us out.
All right, well, thank you for joining us again for this latest episode. If you have any suggestions, things that you want to see us talk about, put them in the comments. Please share the podcast. It certainly helps. We make no money off of this. Believe it or not, we are not becoming super wealthy. We are not endorsed by anybody. We literally do this so that we can provide information to you. We can help you be a better informed voter. Whether you agree with us, disagree with us, if our conversations help spark something in you, or you're going to go look something up and better inform yourself, that's awesome. That's why we do this. So please please share, please subscribe so you know we have new episodes coming out. Share it with a friend that you think might be interested. Or heck, share it with a friend that's like, hey, Chris is like a idiotic war hawk. I'm a peacenik and I think we should just love one another and dissolve NATO. Whatever. We want to be here to help inspire you to be more involved, be a more involved citizen. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Kyle?
Nope, just like and subscribe, and I'd definitely like to see some different topics that y'all want to hear, because I feel like we get stuck in our own little bubble, and the algorithm's feeding us certain topics and all these things, and it's like actually everyone's over here concerned about this or that's happening around DFW.
I can promise you the algorithm is not feeding us Republican Slate cards in the link letter. I think that was entirely an organic conversation for us to have.
That was.
Maybe we can influence the algorithm on that end. But again, let us know if there's anything you'd like to hear. Otherwise, thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.